The old scow they called the Banshee spat me into the inky void between star systems. Asteroids drifted by like lazy leviathans, and the cold light of distant stars painted streaks across my cracked visor. It wasn't the first time I'd been jettisoned, but it usually involved the bounty hunter's blaster to my back rather than the dead rattle of failing life support. Should have listened to Tess when she warned me about that back-alley engine upgrade on Arcturus Prime. I was down to my last hour of oxygen, but my real problem wasn't suffocation. It was the memories. When your life starts draining away, all your failures come crawling out of the woodwork. Jenna's face, frozen in fear as the pirates raided the colony. That was the worst one. Then, like a beacon in the black, my suit's sensor blipped. A data pulse, faint but close. I ran a diagnostic, too garbled to make any sense of. Still, a signal was better than nothing. It was Hope, that treacherous little bastard, and it was all I had left. I engaged the thrusters, pushing my battered suit towards the signal. Even damaged, the Banshee had just enough juice to get me close. The source was a derelict freighter, a skeletal behemoth half swallowed by an asteroid. I docked with a groan of protesting metal. Inside, the air was stale, thick with the chill of a dead ship. The data source thrummed faintly from a metal case tucked under a collapsed bulkhead. Nothing special to look at, but the ancient encryption hummed with a promise untold. I pried the case open and pulled out a chip data drive. Bingo. Navigational coordinates. Ancient ones. Pointing to a sector just beyond the boundaries of the Galactic Concord. Uncharted territory. And one other tidbit. Elysium. The name whispered through legends of starfarers and pirates, a black market station beyond the law, run by humans, a sanctuary for the desperate and the damned. Like me. I jammed the drive into my suit's comp and watched the charts unfurl. One thing was for damn sure. It wasn't going to be a pleasure cruise. Elysium was a needle in a haystack full of hazards, uncharted nebula, black holes, maybe even hostile Xenos. I grinned beneath my helmet. Finally. A challenge worthy of a dead man looking for a second chance. I fired up the Banshee's half-dead engines, and the old girl creaked into motion. The nav charts on the ancient data drive weren't lying about the dangers. First, there was a maelstrom nebula, a swirling madness of charged particles and hungry grav wells. The static played hell with my sensors, making every shadow look like an ambush. I lost count of the number of wrecked ships I passed by, tombstones for fools who'd flown too close to the storm. But something made me keep pushing on. Maybe it was that flicker of hope, maybe it was sheer stubbornness, or maybe it was just the thought of rotting away in the Banshee, eaten alive by guilt and ghosts. Either way, I punched through that nebula, battered and half-blind, but with the Banshee still in one piece. The next hurdle was the Black Maw, a cluster of black holes that seemed to suck the very light out of space. One wrong move and I'd be shredded into stardust. I relied on instinct and a lot of dumb luck, weaving the Banshee through the gravitational chaos like a thread through a needle. Each time I felt the tug of a hungry void, a cold sweat soaked my flight suit. But I made it. By the time I exited the Black Maw, even my threadbare hope was getting thin. The stars ahead were unfamiliar, cold, and distant. I was running low on fuel, oxygen, and most importantly, time. Elysium could be a ghost story, a myth to chase until you starved. Then, it appeared. Not the grand spaceport I imagined. Elysium was a twisted knot of metal and rock, a Frankenstein monster of salvaged ship parts and asteroids fused together. No flashing beacons or landing pads, just the grim silence of the void. I hailed them, sent out every ID code I knew, human or otherwise. Nothing. I was about to give up when a single weak signal flickered back. It wasn't a welcome, Matt, more like a growl of suspicion. A set of docking coordinates blinked on my screen, tucked deep inside the metallic maze. With a sigh that could freeze the vacuum outside, I set course for Elysium. Now came the really tricky part. Docking with Elysium was like parking a flea on a rabid rhino. The Banshee rattled and shook, barely squeezing through the makeshift airlock, a jury-rigged contraption that seemed more likely to tear my ship apart than grant me entry. But beggars can't be choosers, and I wasn't exactly in a position to complain. The pressure equalized with a hiss, and the smell of stale air, recycled sweat, and something unidentifiably chemical flooded the cabin. I popped the Banshee's hatch and floated into a dim, cavernous space filled with crates, pipes, and the shadows of figures moving in the gloom. "Welcome to Elysium," rasped a voice from the darkness. "State your business and don't make any sudden moves." An armored figure materialized in the dim light, its bulky frame cobbled together from what looked like mismatched pieces of military and mining gear. A scarred human face peered at me from beneath a helmet visor. Definitely not the welcoming committee I'd been hoping for. "Name's Jax," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just passing through. Need some supplies, fuel, maybe a few repairs." I left out the part about being a dead man walking. Figured that might hurt my bargaining position. "Passing through to where, human?" The guard's voice crackled with suspicion. "This ain't some sightseeing tour." He was right. Elysium wasn't on any star charts. Anyone that found this place was either lost, desperate, or running from something. Probably all three in my case. I played my only card. "I have information," I said, holding up the data drive. "Might be of interest to the right people?" The guard hesitated, then jerked his head. "Follow me." He led me through a labyrinth of tunnels, past makeshift workshops thrumming with activity, past grimy faces, human, alien, things I couldn't even put a name to. This wasn't just a black market, it was a whole hidden world. We reached a heavy metal door guarded by two figures that looked like they could eat the last guy for breakfast. They searched me, rough but thorough, taking the precious data drive before shoving me inside. The room was dimly lit, smoke swirling around a lone figure seated behind a massive desk fashioned from an old starship engine block. He was human, all right, but old, his body a withered roadmap of scars beneath a tattered officer's tunic. His eyes, when they fixed on me, were sharp as ice. "This information better be as valuable as you say," he rasped, his voice laced with a hint of some accent I couldn't place. "Time to go all in. This could start a war, old man, or stop one." The old man leaned forward, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the engine block desk. "Big words, Spacer. Let's see what you got." One of the guards plugged the data drive into a salvage console. Ancient maps flickered onto a holographic display. The Galactic Concord, familiar territory, but then the projection zoomed out, revealing a vast swath of uncharted space. Sectors marked with unfamiliar names, a network of alien worlds hidden beyond the Concord's borders. And at the center of it all, a pulsating red dot labeled Nexus. "What in the seven hells is this?" the old man breathed. "I scavenged this data off a derelict freighter, as old as dust," I explained. "But the encryption, it's alien. Took me months to crack even a sliver of it. There's a whole network of trade routes, supply lines, outposts out there. This Nexus, it's their hub." "And who are they?" the old man pressed, his voice tight. "I don't know. Could be a new confederation, a cartel, maybe even a hostile power massing in the shadows." I couldn't offer him certainties, just possibilities, each one more dangerous than the last. He studied the map, his brow furrowed. "This changes everything," he muttered. "The Concord thinks they're the big fish in this star pond. They've been blind to what's brewing out there." He trailed off, and the silence stretched thin. Outside, the hum of Elysium continued, the heartbeat of this underground world. But inside the room, I knew things were shifting. The stakes had just gotten a hell of a lot higher. The old man finally looked up, his eyes hard. "My people will need to verify this data. In the meantime, you'll be our guest," he said, and his tone made it clear that guest was a loose term. The guards hauled me off to a cell. It's cleaner than the Banshee, but not by much. As the heavy metal door clanged shut, the weight of what I'd stumbled into finally hit me. I had a choice to make, and none of the options were good. I could play it safe, try to bargain my way to some fuel and fade back into the void, maybe find some out-of-the-way rock, drink myself stupid and forget I ever heard the word Elysium. Or I could stick my neck out, help these Elysium folk figure out what they're dealing with. Maybe, just maybe, I could make up for the past, for Jenna, for the colony I failed, and maybe, in the chaos that was sure to come, I could find that fresh start I'd been chasing. The old man was right. This could start a war, and damned if I wasn't tired of running. Turns out guest meant prisoner, but a well-fed one at least. Meals came on dented metal trays, edible, if you ignored the slightly synthetic aftertaste. I'd learned enough from the whispers in the corridor to know Elysium was barely self-sufficient. They grew their own food in hydroponic vats, recycled everything, and relied on scavenged tech no one else wanted. But they were tough. These black market survivors, resourceful in ways that reminded me of the colony back in Arcturus Prime. My cell even had a viewport, showing me a slice of Elysium's madness. Ships of every make and model docked and departed. sleek cruisers beside rust bucket freighters. There were beings I'd never seen outside the holovids, hulking reptilians, insectoids clicking and chirping, even a shimmering blob of energy that seemed to pulse in and out of existence. This place was the galaxy's melting pot, and it was simmering with tension. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only a few days, time blurs when you're staring at a bulkhead, they finally hauled me back to the old man's makeshift command center. He sat behind his engine-block throne, flanked by a scarred woman with fierce eyes and a mountain of a man sporting cybernetic implants that crackled with barely contained energy. Guess this was his inner circle. "My techs and scouts have confirmed your data," the old man began, his gravelly voice booming in the confined space. "This nexus is real. We've been intercepting their comms, rudimentary, but it's a hornet's nest of activity." "Good. So now what?" I asked, playing the impatient spacer. I still didn't trust them fully, hadn't told them my whole sorry story. "My people were driven from their homes," the old man said, a shadow crossing his face. "The Concord sweet-talked us with promises of peace and prosperity. Then they turned on us, branded us dissidents and pirates." He spat the word like it tasted foul. "We retreated to the shadows, built this." He gestured around to the grimy world of Elysium. "So what are we looking at?" I needed answers, a sense of players involved. Is this Nexus some warlord's empire, or something more organized? The woman spoke up, her voice edged with bitterness. "It's not just one faction, Jax. They call themselves the Coalition, a hodgepodge of alien races the Concord pushed too far, same as they did to us. United by a common enemy. And you think they're getting ready to strike back," I finished, the pieces clicking into place. All those ships, the hush-hush meetings. It was more than just smuggling and shady deals. Elysium was the tinderbox, and I'd just thrown in the match. The room fell heavy with unspoken truths. The Concord, for all their shiny propaganda, weren't the benevolent protectors they painted themselves to be. They policed the stars with an iron fist, crushing any who stepped out of line. Sure, there was peace, a brittle sort that ignored the simmering resentment on the fringes, and now the flames were flicking higher. "What do you want me to do?" I asked warily. Sure, I was no fan of the Concord, but a galaxy-wide war? That was a different level of disaster. "You found the spark. Now you help us control the fire," the old man replied. "It ain't about saving the Concord. It's about preventing a bloodbath that'll swallow us whole." The woman, I learned her name was Anya, leaned forward. "The Coalition, they're not some united force. Dissidents, exiles, pirates, they're barely holding together by shared hatred. If we can disrupt the Nexus, break their supply lines, fracture their alliance, maybe they stand down. Maybe there's another way. And that's where I come in. I wasn't an idealist, never had been, but saving my own skin had gotten old, and for once, someone else's problem seemed a hell of a lot bigger than my own. The cybernetic giant who went by the name of Titan just snorted. "You? You're the man in the busted-up scow?" "True enough," I admitted. "But I know my way around the shady corners of the galaxy. I know how to fly under the radar, how to disappear." The old man nodded slowly. "You'll be our eyes and ears in the shadows. Infiltrate the Coalition, learn their plans, find their weaknesses." A spy, then? The word hung sour in my mouth, but spies were what won wars, weren't they? "A chance to use that criminal mind for something good," Anya quipped. I couldn't tell if it was an insult or a compliment. "All right, you got yourselves a deal," I said, extending a hand to the old man. He took it, his grip surprisingly strong. "My name's Marcus," he said gruffly. "Welcome to the fight, Jax." They didn't waste any time. Within a day, the Banshee had a patched-up engine and a hold full of contraband to use as my cover story. Anya gave me a crash course in some of the Coalition's common tongues and a comlink with an untraceable encryption. Lastly, Marcus handed me a heavy blaster pistol. "You may need this," he said grimly. "Trust no one." I left Elysium under the cloak of night, armed with flimsy intel and a gnawing sense of dread. The plan was simple, yet impossibly dangerous. Find a backwater world rumored to deal with the Coalition, flash my cargo, and hope the right people took the bait. I wasn't a soldier or a diplomat, just a smuggler with a broken past and a knack for staying one step ahead of trouble. Or getting shot. Often it was a close call. The weeks blurred into a string of seedy spaceports and tense negotiations in dimly lit cantinas. I posed as a disgruntled freighter captain, bitter after one too many run-ins with Concorde patrols. It was a role I didn't have to act too hard to play. The whispers and rumors led me to a backwater mining colony named Caraxus, the kind of place where despair was the currency of choice. One too many drinks in a grimy bar, a few carefully placed complaints about the suffocating reach of the Concorde, and word finally reached who I needed it to. A few nights later, I was drifting in the Banshee just beyond Caraxus's failing sensor net when they made contact. A sleek, unmarked ship materialized out of the darkness, its hull gleaming in ominous black. A tractor beam locked onto my ship, pulling me into their hold. This was it, the roll of the dice that could get me killed or get me into the heart of the Coalition. I was met by armored guards, aliens with insectoid features and cold, multifaceted eyes. They took me deeper into the ship, past whirring machinery and compartments filled with crates of unknown cargo. I kept my mouth shut, playing the part of the wary smuggler, but my guts twisted with nerves. They brought me to a command center, sleek and sterile compared to Elysium's grid. A figure turned from the viewport, and I almost flinched. A woman, but not human. A slender form draped in iridescent scales, eyes as yellow and slitted as a predator's. She studied me, curiosity flicking in those reptilian eyes before it was masked by cold appraisal. "Human," she hissed in a voice like rustling leaves. "I am Slit. You have something we want." "Just a spacer trying to make a living," I said with a shrug. "The Concorde makes that damn hard." She tilted her head, studying me. "What makes you seek out the Coalition?" "Let's just say I've got an axe to grind with those bastards." The memory of the raid on Arcturus Prime burned in my mind, a constant fuel for the anger simmering just beneath the surface. It was a gamble, but it paid off. A hint of a smile curled Slit's lips, revealing needle-like teeth. "Then perhaps we have common ground." Slit led me deeper into the Coalition, not as a trusted member, far from it, but as a useful tool. I flew supply runs to isolated outposts, weapons, medicine, strange alien tech I dared not ask about. I learned fast. The Coalition was a tangled mess of desperation and ambition, held together by their hatred of the Concorde. Species forced into exile, their homes taken, their families killed, united only by their thirst for revenge. And Slit? Well, she was ruthless, cunning, a natural leader, even among these disparate aliens. I relayed every scrap of information back to Elysium. Marcus's voice crackled over the comms, grim and determined. They pieced together the fragments, supply routes, troop movements, whispers of a grand offensive. Each night I laid in my cramped bunk, staring at the cold metal ceiling of the Coalition ship, wondering if I was betraying the only people who'd given me a chance. If Jenna could see me now, working with the very aliens who might one day raid another helpless colony. I shoved the thought down. I was playing a dangerous game, and there was no room for guilt. One run took me to a barren moon scarred with craters. There, in a hidden bunker, I stumbled upon their secret weapon. Not a doomsday device, but something more insidious. A propaganda machine. Data drives filled with falsified reports of Concorde atrocities, doctored comms broadcasts, every tool needed to stir the galaxy into a frenzy of war. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about manipulating the masses, painting the Concorde as the ultimate evil. I slipped one of the drives into my pocket, the weight of it heavy in more ways than one. That night, I sent an encrypted message to Marcus. This was the key, the proof of the Coalition's manipulation, something that could turn the tide if used right. They pulled me back to the main Coalition fleet soon after. The air thrummed with tension, an undercurrent of anticipation. Slit barely acknowledged me as I went through the motions, a cog in their war machine. Then, one evening, she came to my quarters, her serpentine figure weaving through the dim light. "You served us well, human," she said, her voice a chilling whisper. "The first strikes will happen soon. The galaxy will burn." "And then what?" I asked, unable to keep the bitterness from my tone. "All this death, all this hate, will it bring back your homes?" She tilted her head, her eyes glinting. "It will bring justice. It will bring change. The Concorde will fall, and new order will rise." "An order built on blood?" She hissed, a flicker of anger sparking in those reptilian eyes. You humans are so naive. You cling to your precious peace, blind to the rot it breeds. I clenched my fist. This wasn't about justice, it was about vengeance, pure and poisonous. I had to get out, get the evidence of the Coalition's lies to Elysium. Well, thanks for the hospitality, I said, pushing past her, but I think I'll be finding my own way back from here. The look on Slit's face was enough to tell me I'd made a fatal mistake. I didn't make it 3 steps before the insectoid guard slammed me against the bulkhead. Slit's hiss echoed in the confined space. You have seen too much, human. You cannot be allowed to leave. They dragged me to a cramped cell, more like a cage than a room. Fear gnawed at my guts, acidic and relentless. This was it. All my luck had ran out. The Banshee was docked on the far side of the ship. There was no way I could reach it. I was trapped, a dead man waiting for the sentence. Hours bled into each other, a monotonous nightmare punctuated by the occasional taunt and jeer from guards. Desperation clawed at me. They'd kill me, or worse, drag me in front of Slit and her cronies for interrogation. I couldn't let them crack me. Too many lives depended on it. Then, like a miracle, a flicker of light through the cell bars. A commotion echoed down the corridor. Shouts, the metallic clang of a fight. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm. Was it a prison break? A distraction? A figure burst through the doorway, a whirlwind of motion in the dim light. Anya. Her face was grim, flecked with blood. Behind her, Titan loomed like a vengeful giant, his cybernetic limbs sparking with energy. Well, damn, Jax. Never thought I'd be happy to see your sorry face, Anya said, tossing me a blaster. Took you long enough, I shot back, a rush of adrenaline flooding the despair. Shut up and shoot, Titan roared as he charged the guards, a relentless force that scattered the insectoids. In the chaos, we sprinted through the corridors, a desperate dash for the docking bays. Alarms blared and we dodged blaster fire, the ship alive with the frenzy of battle. Had the Coalition somehow discovered Elysium's location? Were they under attack? We reached the bay, Marcus and a squad of his battle-hardened scavengers already blasting their way onto the Banshee. Marcus threw me the stolen data drive, his face etched with a grim determination. Get this to Concord, he shouted over the din. Tell them the truth, then get the hell out of here while you still can. I didn't need telling twice. I clambered into the Banshee, the familiar scent of engine grease and stale rations a balm to the soul compared to the sterile chill of the Coalition ship. With a roar of protesting engines, we broke away, tearing through the melee of fighters. Behind us, the Coalition fleet erupted in fire and chaos. It was too late to stop the war. The match had been lit. But maybe, just maybe, that flicker of truth in the data drive could turn the tide, expose the lies, and give an unsuspecting galaxy a fighting chance. I set course for Concord space, the weight of responsibility crushing me. I was a smuggler, a drifter, not a damn savior. Yet, as the Banshee hurtled through the void, a flicker of something like hope ignited within me. One man can't change the galaxy, but hell, maybe you could try to save it.